Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you Seiko's new Laurel Alpinist in 38mm, and later in this video I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison with the Seiko Laurel Alpinist and last year's Seiko Baby Alpinist, which we also made a video on. Let's jump right in. So before I jump into the new Seiko Laurel Alpinist reinterpretations, I have to talk about the original Laurel Alpinist. So Seiko's latest addition to the Alpinist series takes inspiration from their 1959 Seiko Laurel Alpinist, which was created for Yama Otoko, which is a Japanese word for mountain men. And the name Laurel itself comes from Seiko's first Japanese wristwatch, which used the Laurel name since 1913. The actual Seiko Laurel Alpinist was a shift for Seiko and marked its entry into the sports watch game. It now had a screw case back to prevent dust or particles from entering the watch, and it had a sturdy bun leather strap to protect the watch from sweat. And it also had sharp mountain-shaped markers at 3, 6, 9, and 12 o'clock, representing mountains. These 4 markers also represented the main points on a compass, and this year Seiko recreated the Laurel Alpinist in this model, which is the SJE085, which is a 36.6mm case with 11.1mm thickness and a 45-hour power reserve with its 6L35 thin movement. And lately, they have been killing it with their recreation pieces, being near identical reproductions of the original pieces, but with modern finishing and movements. Now, this new SJE085 is priced at $2,900, and as you'll see in this video today, it's going to lend a lot of its inspiration into these new reinterpretation pieces. But today, I'm going to focus on showing you these new pieces, the SPB241, 243, and 245. So the 3 models I'm going to show you here today. First, SPB241 Champagne Dial, which I think already is a winner. It's so beautiful. Then next, I'll show you the SPB243, it's the gray dial. And last, the SPB245 with its green dial. And I love the way Seiko does its green because this one reminds me a lot of Legend of Zelda. If you look at the 12 o'clock marker, it looks like the Triforce, which is such a nerdy reference. But anyways, all of these watches feature a 38mm stainless steel case, a thickness of 12.9mm, and a lug-to-lug of 46mm. It's actually the same fit as the Baby Alpinist. And on my 6.4-inch wrist, these fit amazingly well since my sweet spot usually is between 38 to 40mm. So I'm continuing to love this case size. The case is mostly brushed throughout the case sides and has slight accents of high polish on the lugs and onto the case side. And you'll notice that the bezel is bifaceted, high polish, and it just surrounds that slightly domed sapphire crystal, which is supposed to represent the old acrylic style crystals. And when you wear it on the wrist, you can actually see that sweet crystal distortion around the edge. Now, the Champagne Dial, SPB241, and the SPB243 Gray Dial both come on a stainless steel bracelet, which is mainly brushed, except there are slight accents in between the bracelet that are high polish. So I really like brush polish finish for a watch like this, like an adventure watch, because anyways, I don't want to be worried about scratching the high polish surfaces. So Seiko did a great job just adding little accents here of high polish. That way it adds a little bit of flair, and you can actually really see the sparkles of light bouncing off the edges of the bracelet. But the benefit is you won't be scratching up those areas often since it's kind of tucked between the links. And on the SPB245, the green dial version, this one is paired with a black matte leather strap with the trifold folding clasp. Now the 3 dial colors here is green, gray, and champagne, and they're all sunburst finish, which are reflective but still have a muted or deep color, and all share the same design language from the Laurel Alpinist with its triangular and rectangular hour markers, which are all applied and filled with blue Lumibrite. Like I mentioned earlier, the triangular mountain-shaped hour markers surrounding the dial are supposed to invoke the 4 main points on a compass, but you notice here at 3 o'clock, the reinterpretation models actually took out the 3rd 3 o'clock triangular marker and they put a date window which is bordered, and they added 2 little squares with blue Lumibrite, so you still get lume and you get the date in a more symmetrical position. Now you notice all the hour markers are applied, so it adds this nice dimension to the dial. And then as you go closer to the center, you'll see that there is a minute track that touches the edge of each of the hours. And it's cool because this kind of is a sector dial, which has been really popular and popping up across different brands doing vintage reinterpretations. And also the minute track color matches perfectly with the dial, so it doesn't create this contrast. It actually complements it really well, creating a nice symmetry. Now you'll notice that the handset is a Dauphine handset, which is very similar to the original. It is also filled with blue Lumibrite, so it's sharp, touches the edge of the dial, and the second hands are all gold, so it creates this nice contrast. Each of them use color really well, and Seiko created some awesome, beautiful colors in each of these. The text on the dial is very minimal. You have the Seiko logo applied right under 12 o'clock, and then underneath that, you have the Prospex logo X, you have the original automatic script font, and then you have 20 bar, since this is a 200-meter water resistance watch. You notice that just like the Baby Alpinist, these Laurel Alpinists do not have a rotating compass bezel, because you can actually use any watch to tell compass direction if you know the current hour and position of the sun, which we covered in our Seiko Alpinist video last year. Now my favorite among these three dials is definitely the Champagne dial. It looks the most dressy, but still has a mountaineer tool watch feeling. And champagne color dials are usually not my thing, but I think Seiko really nailed the color and the feeling of this watch. So I think I might just have to add that to my own collection. And for those wanting more true to the original or muted, I would definitely suggest a gray dial, since it has great legibility and this will match really well. And of course, you know that Seiko had to do a green dial because it is an Alpinist, and I think that we can all agree that green dial Alpinist is kind of like the de facto color, and it's very popular since it's what made the SARB really popular. And the green here is a really beautiful lush dial with a sunburst finish as well. While the top of the watch has a sapphire crystal, the bottom crystal is actually mineral crystal, which allows you to view the 6R35 movement. And the 6R35 movement contains a power reserve of 70 hours, which is near 3 days. And this has been a movement Seiko has been using throughout all their Seiko Luxe products. And 70 hours definitely seems fitting for a watch they're denoting as an adventurous watch. Seiko rates this 6R35 movement at -15 to +25 seconds per day. But we all know that Seiko tends to undervalue their movements, since two of my own Seiko watches, the SPB241 and SPB243, which use the 6R35, are both running within 5 seconds per day, and they also use that same exact movement as here. Honestly, I love the 70-hour power reserve because if I were to wear this watch Monday through Friday and change to a different watch on the weekend, when I pick my watch back up on Monday, it will still be running and keeping time. Now that we talked about the movement, let's jump in to do a comparison of the Baby Alpinist and the Laurel Alpinist. So what I'm going to do now is do a side-by-side comparison of the Seiko Baby Alpinist, the SPB155, and the Seiko Laurel Alpinist, the SPB245. I chose both of these because they're both a green dial and they kind of represent that popular color with the Alpinist, but you'll see with the side-by-side that they are completely different constructed. So first, similarities. They both have a 38mm case with a 12.9mm thickness and a 46mm lug-to-lug on the wrist. They both have a sapphire crystal on top with mineral crystal on bottom. They both have a 20-bar water-resistant screw-down crowns, and they both offer a stainless steel bracelet with 2 spots of micro-adjustment. Now, what I have to show you on the difference, first on the Baby Alpinist, you can see side by side that in certain angles, one might actually look larger than the other. And I think the Laurel Alpinist plays with light a little bit better just because, like I mentioned earlier, it has a bifaceted bezel that surrounds the crystal. And so it actually looks like it has a larger appearance. And I think they also give a little bit of dial diameter here on this version, where on the Baby Alpinist, it's a lot more compact looking. You can see that directly in the finishing. So on the Baby Alpinist, you'll see there's a lot more high polished finish on the sides, where the front of the dial and the watch all have this kind of brush polish on the lugs. Whereas on the Laurel Alpinist, you'll see that the side is all brush polish and the front side, it uses a lot more high polish. And because the lugs also have this bifaceted, it kind of plays with the shadow and light really well. So sometimes the lugs will look a little slimmer than they actually are. And while they both offer a bracelet version, the bracelet on the Baby Alpinist is full brush polish, so it's completely brushed throughout, where you'll notice on the Laurel Alpinist, as I mentioned too, it has little areas of high polish down the center. So it adds a little bit more flair and a little bit more kind of like luxury feeling to the bracelet. And the bracelet sizes are also different. The lug width between the Baby Alpinist is 20mm, while the lug width on the Laurel Alpinist is 19 millimeters. Last thing I want to mention on the case itself is that they both have screw down crowns, but the way they execute it is completely different. So the Baby Alpinist has this knurled screw down crown. It's a little wider spaces in between, also easy to grip, while the Laurel Alpinist has a coin edge grip. It's a lot more finer, and it's still easy to grip, but it's a little bit more finer and refined. They both don't have any finishing on the crown itself, so unsigned, no Seiko logo on there. Now let's talk about the dial similarities. So both of them have a date window at 3 o'clock, and both of them have the same text and logo placement. And that's literally where the similarities end. So you notice on the Baby Alpinist, I would definitely say the Baby Alpinist has more color variation in the dial, because you have to remember this uses a fume sand texture dial with the most vibrant color starting in the middle and then punching into blackness into the edge of the dial. And you'll notice that the date window is also black, so it also contrasts and complements the dial color well. Where on the Laurel Alpinist, it's a sunburst dial. It's a little reflective, not matte finished. And in the date window here is white colored, which also still matches the dial color really well. Regarding the hour markers, obviously the Laurel Alpinist uses the applied triangular hour markers for the compass direction, and the minute ring is at the edge of the hour markers, so towards the center, which has a sector dial. Whereas on the Baby Alpinist, you'll notice that it uses those Arabic numerals. It is printed, so it's not applied, and it's a reverse actually, because the minute track is on the outside of the dial, where the hour markers are put in the middle. And now they both use LumiBrite, but the way they do LumiBrite is different. So on the Baby Alpinist, the LumiBrite is only on the hands, the seconds hand, and also on the dots on the minute track, so not the actual hour marker. So the 12, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 are not loomed, but that's actually where on the Laurel Alpinist, all of the applied hour markers have loomed. So you actually get a lot more visibility in low light just because this has more loom added on those hour markers. And the handsets are also different. You have the classic Dauphine handset here with the gold seconds hand, and it has a tipped seconds hand as well, where this Baby Alpinist uses those cathedral handset that we're used to. Some people call it the Mercedes hour hand because it kind of looks like the Mercedes logo. So the handset they also use is different. Overall, what you can notice right away is that I think color-wise, the Baby Alpinist has a lot more richness to the color, but I think the Laurel Alpinist is a lot cleaner in its execution with its color. And in the Laurel Alpinist, because it has applied indices, it adds more depth to the dial. And because it puts the hour markers on the outside of the dial, it actually feels a little cleaner, because usually when you read time, you read the hours, then the minutes. Whereas on the Baby Alpinist, they put the minute track on the outside. It's still a clean look. And the way they organize it is still well executed, but it's just a different layout of how they've done both watches. Oh, and you'll also notice both of these versions do not have a rotating compass bezel because this one is the Baby Alpinist. It is supposed to be a more minimalistic version of that classic Alpinist we're used to. And this is the Laurel Alpinist, which the Re-Creation also did not use the compass bezel. So they've taken off there. Both of these are kind of like a everyday adventurer watch. So they both kind of fit that same category. And now, the movement on both of these watches are the exact same, 6R35, so there's nothing really to say there. And the last thing is the pricing. So on the Baby Alpinist, the one on the bracelet, SPB241 in green dial goes for $725, while on the new Laurel Alpinist, this version, the SPB241 in champagne, also on bracelet, actually goes for $750. That $25 difference could be due to the amount of finishing that they do differently here with the high polish on the bracelet, the bezel, applied hour markers, but essentially you are getting a very similar watch for around the same price. So let me know in the comments below which one is your favorite. My favorite down here is definitely going to be the champagne dial. I might add that to my collection. We'll see later this year. Thanks so much for stopping by. It's been a minute. If you're new here, please subscribe to our channel. Like this video if you like this side-by-side comparison of the Baby Alpinist and Laurel Alpinist, and leave a comment below on which of these is your favorite. I'll see you guys next time.